Am I the idiot for publicly exposing my father-in-law's years of sabotaging my career during my promotion dinner? Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This is going to be long, sorry. I just need to know if I completely screwed up here. I, male, 38, just got promoted to VP of Engineering at my tech company after 15 years in this industry. I come from a modest background. Dad was a teacher, mom was a nurse, small Midwest town. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I worked 2 to 3 jobs to pay tuition at a state school. I'm not trying to sound like some kind of hero, just giving context. I met my wife Sarah, female, 36, during my senior year when she was a junior. She was there for some program and came from this wealthy East Coast family. We hit it off despite coming from different worlds. Her family vacationed in Europe every year, and my family's big trip was driving to see my grandma 2 states over. From literally the first time I met her dad, Harold, male 65, he seemed off about me. Not outright hostile, but definitely skeptical. He always introduced me as Sarah's boyfriend from State University for the first 3 years we dated. Even after we got engaged, he'd do this. He'd talk about my little computer job, despite me working for major tech companies. Harold owns this chain of furniture stores that he's constantly reminding everyone he built from a single location. He's obsessed with his legacy and business success. He's always positioned himself as this mentor figure to me, offering guidance and connections, but looking back, he was sabotaging me the entire time. The first really obvious incident was about 8 years ago at their family Christmas party. Harold made this huge deal about introducing me to some executive from a major tech company. He was like, "This could really help your career, James," and made a show of introducing us in front of everyone. When I followed up a week later asking about this guy's contact info, Harold was like, "Oh, he wasn't that impressed with your credentials. Maybe in a few years." I felt like shit for weeks, thinking I'd somehow messed up this opportunity. But the worst was about 6 years ago, when I decided to start my own software development company. Harold had been making these comments for months about how I didn't have what it takes to succeed at bigger firms and should carve my own path. Then he offered to invest $50,000 as seed money, even signed a letter of intent, which I used to bring in other investors. Then he pulled out last minute, claiming market conditions had changed. Several other investors got cold feet after that. My company struggled for like a year and a half before I had to close it. I was devastated. Sarah and I had put everything into that business. About 4 years ago, after rebuilding my career at a new company, I accidentally saw an email that wasn't meant for me. My boss had accidentally CC'd me on a response to Harold, where he was basically thanking Harold for his insights about me. I opened the email chain and saw that Harold had contacted my new boss to suggest I needed additional oversight and wasn't ready for significant responsibility. I was fucking furious. That's when I started keeping records of everything: emails, texts, voicemails, conversations with colleagues who Harold had contacted. So last month, I got promoted to VP of Engineering. Literally, the position Harold kept implying was beyond my capabilities. I decided to have this celebration dinner at an upscale restaurant last weekend. Invited close friends, colleagues, and family, including Sarah's parents. Sarah was super proud, and even Harold seemed genuinely happy when he first heard about the promotion. I almost didn't invite Harold, but Sarah insisted that family harmony was important. I even spent $200 on a new tie for the occasion because I kept hearing Harold's voice in my head saying my usual ties looked department store quality, whatever the fuck that means. So the dinner comes, everyone's having a good time. Then Harold stands up and taps his glass for attention. He starts congratulating me on finally reaching my potential, and then transitions to talking about how sometimes young men need guidance from experienced businessmen. Then he says, and I shit you not, "I've been mentoring James behind the scenes for years. I essentially made him who he is today." And he locked eyes with me while saying it, like he was daring me to disagree. The room got so quiet. I could feel everyone looking at me, and something just broke. After 12 years of this shit, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up slowly, thanked Harold for his toast, pretty sarcastically to be honest, and said I'd like to acknowledge Harold's contributions to my career. Then I just started listing everything, specific instances with dates. The Christmas party executive who mysteriously wasn't impressed with me, the $50 investment he promised and withdrew, the email to my boss. I even mentioned how he called a key client of my startup to question our competence. Sarah gasped at this. She didn't know about that one. I finished by saying my success came despite Harold's efforts, not because of them. Harold's face went from smug to bright red. He called me ungrateful and stormed out. His wife Elaine, female, 63, just sat there looking stunned. The dinner ended pretty awkwardly after that. Everyone left quickly. Sarah was crying in the car on the way home. She said she had suspected some of her dad's behavior, but had no idea how extensive it was. She kept saying, "I should have believed you," over and over. When we got home, I saw like 5 missed calls from Elaine. When I finally answered, she told me she'd confronted Harold with questions about everything I'd said. Apparently, he was dismissive and told her to stay out of men's business. What the frick? She said she asked him for a divorce after 40 years of marriage. I feel validated, but also like I've destroyed my wife's family. Sarah has been really quiet since that night. Edit, turns out she wasn't disappointed in me like I thought. She was processing her anger toward her father. She told me this morning that she's proud I finally stood up for myself. I never wanted to cause all this family drama, but I also spent years documenting his sabotage, so clearly I was planning something. I don't know. I'm confused about my own motives here. So, am I the idiot for confronting Harold so publicly after years of keeping quiet? And should I try to intervene in Elaine's decision to divorce Harold? Sarah says to stay out of it, but I feel responsible. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and support. A lot of people are asking about Elaine and Harold's marriage. I honestly don't know much about their relationship before this. Elaine always seemed happy, but quiet at family gatherings. She was always super nice to me, but never really stood up to Harold when he'd make his little jabs. For those asking why I kept records for so long without doing anything, I guess I was gathering evidence, but never really had a plan for using it. I think I just needed to prove to myself I wasn't crazy or imagining things. Some of you are saying I should have handled this privately instead of ambushing Harold at a public dinner. Maybe you're right, but honestly, he's the one who decided to stand up and take credit for my success in front of everyone. Now for the first update. So it's been about 2 weeks since the dinner from hell, and everything has been, well, intense is putting it mildly. Harold has basically been on this smear campaign against me to Sarah's entire extended family. He's telling everyone that I'm ungrateful and delusional and that I grossly exaggerated everything because I apparently have some weird vendetta against him. He's even suggesting to people that I might be having some kind of mental breakdown due to the pressure of my new position, which is just, I can't even with this guy. Sarah has been getting these non-stop calls and texts from aunts, uncles, cousins. It's been awful watching her try to deal with this. I mean, this is her dad we're talking about. No matter what he did to me, that's still her father. She's been amazing though, standing by me, even when her cousin Megan called and basically accused me of making everything up for attention. The most unexpected thing happened like 3 days after my post. Sarah's younger brother Michael called out of the blue. He's been kind of estranged from the family for years. He shows up at Christmas and major events, but otherwise keeps his distance. Turns out, Harold did the exact same shit to him that he did to me. Michael was trying to establish himself as an artist about a decade ago, and Harold repeatedly sabotaged him while pretending to help. He canceled gallery showings by telling the owners Michael wasn't ready to display yet. Michael said Harold even steered potential buyers away from his work at shows while pretending to promote him. Like, who does that to their own kid? When Sarah heard all this, it was like watching someone's entire understanding of their childhood rewrite itself in real time. She just kept saying, "It wasn't just James," over and over. It's actually embarrassing to admit some of the ways I tried to impress Harold over the years. Like, there was this time about 6 years ago when I spent way beyond my budget on this fancy watch. We're talking 3 months' rent on my wrist, basically. I had just gotten a small bonus, and instead of putting it toward our savings like I should have, I bought this watch because Harold was always making these little comments about how successful men present themselves. So I show up to this family brunch wearing it, feeling like an idiot, but also hoping he'd notice. And of course he does. Looks it over, and then says loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Nice try, but the craftsmanship on the knockoffs is always a dead giveaway." It wasn't a knockoff. I still sometimes wear the stupid thing even though it brings up awful memories. I don't even know why. As for Elaine, she's staying with her sister while talking to divorce attorneys. She actually called me privately last week to thank me for speaking up. She said that she'd been unhappy for at least 15 years, but never had the courage to leave. Apparently, my confrontation was the final push she needed. I have really mixed feelings about this. On one hand, I'm glad she might finally find some happiness. On the other hand, I was worried about her financial situation. Harold has controlled their finances for decades. Shows how much I know. When I tried to suggest she might want to talk to a financial advisor, she actually laughed and told me she's been secretly consulting with financial advisors for years. She apparently has a much better understanding of their assets than Harold realizes. There's this whole side of Elaine I never knew existed. The craziest part of these 2 weeks has been the people coming out of the woodwork with their own Harold stories. A former business partner from my startup emailed me saying Harold had privately warned him I was unreliable and would likely abandon the business when things got tough, all while smiling to my face and pretending to be my biggest supporter. 2 colleagues from previous jobs confirmed Harold had contacted them with undermining comments about my work ethic. One of them actually apologized for believing Harold over me for years. I don't even know how to process that. But the most shocking thing, Sarah was looking for some old family photos at her mom's sister's house and discovered that Harold kept detailed files on various family members. There was literally a folder labeled James Leverage that contained information about my student loan debt, a minor car accident from college, and pages of notes about perceived weaknesses in my business plans. Who does that? Sarah's cousin Jennifer called us and immediately started accusing me of lying about Harold. Sarah defended me, asking why Jennifer would assume I was making things up. Jennifer mentioned how Harold had helped pay for her wedding, so she didn't believe he could do the things we claimed. When we told her about the files Harold kept on family members, including her, she got really quiet and nervous. She asked what was in her file, but Sarah refused to share specific details. Jennifer said she needed to think about things, and we haven't heard from her since. I met with Elaine at her sister's home last weekend. Sarah couldn't go because of work, though I think she was also kind of relieved to have an excuse not to go. This whole thing has been so hard on her. Elaine told me about her marriage. She said she had suspected Harold's interference in my career, but had been taught to never question her husband's business dealings. Harold controlled every financial decision, despite her coming from a wealthy family herself. He made her doubt herself for decades. The craziest part, Elaine revealed she's kept a journal documenting Harold's behavior for years, but she was too afraid to take action. She never told anyone about the journal until now. Harold has refused any suggestion of therapy or mediation. He told Sarah that everything he did was meant to help me by testing my resilience. He actually told Sarah that if James had been worthy of success, nothing I could have done would have stopped him. Like, what kind of twisted logic is that? Sabotaging someone is somehow character building. I can't even wrap my head around this. I honestly don't know how I'm feeling right now. Vindicated that I wasn't crazy. Relieved I finally stood up for myself. Worried about Sarah, who's processing both anger at her father and guilt for not believing me sooner. Uncertain about what family gatherings will look like in the future. All of the above, I guess. Sarah and I started therapy last week. Our therapist specializes in family trauma, and she's been helping us process everything and figure out how to set better boundaries going forward. I thought Sarah was completely done with her dad after everything that's come out. She's been so strong and supportive. But 2 nights ago, I found her crying while looking at old family photos. There was this picture of Harold teaching her to ride a bike, and she just completely broke down. He wasn't always a monster, she kept saying, and I realized how complicated this is for her. No matter what Harold did to me, or Michael, or even Elaine, he's still the dad who taught her to ride a bike and checked under her bed for monsters. I guess I'm looking for advice on how to support both Sarah and Elaine while maintaining my own well-being through all this. Should I try to talk to Harold directly or just stay away? The last thing I want is to make things harder for Sarah, but I also don't want to pretend everything's fine if we do eventually have to be in the same room. Now for the second update. So it's been about 3 months since everything went down with Harold at my promotion dinner, and I wanted to give hopefully, one last update because you guys were seriously so helpful with all your advice and support. I waited this long to post again because I wanted to see how things would actually play out long term. Like, the initial explosion was one thing, but I needed to see what the actual fallout would look like once the dust settled. First of all, my work life has been completely different without Harold's constant sabotage. I mean, I knew he was interfering, but I honestly had no idea how much until he wasn't doing it anymore. I got put in charge of this huge new initiative at my company last month, and my boss pulled me aside after the announcement to tell me something that honestly made me feel sick. Apparently, I was supposed to lead this exact same project last year, but it got delayed when a board member who just happens to play golf with Harold every other weekend suggested I wasn't seasoned enough for it. Like, I can't even process that. How many opportunities did I miss over the years because of this man? And yes, I still call him this man instead of my father-in-law because fuck him, honestly. I still occasionally have stress dreams where Harold shows up to important meetings and tells everyone I'm incompetent. I wake up in a cold sweat every time. Okay, so the Elaine-Harold divorce saga. What started as a seemingly straightforward separation has turned into this absolute shit show. Harold tried to hide assets and claimed that like half their properties were business-related and therefore not part of the marital assets. Which is hilarious because Elaine's attorney found all this evidence of him commingling funds for years. Like, dude was paying for personal vacations from business accounts and vice versa. So he basically strengthened Elaine's position by being a greedy asshole. The most surprising thing about this whole situation has been watching Elaine transform into this completely different person. She's taking financial literacy courses, reconnecting with friends Harold didn't approve of. There were a lot, apparently. And she's even taking classes at the community college. She called me last week, all excited because she's been secretly painting for like 20 years, like hiding canvases in the attic where Harold wouldn't find them. She's converting his home office into an art studio, and she sounded so fucking happy about it I almost cried. Sarah has been processing. That's the only word for it. She's had to basically reevaluate her entire childhood through this new lens of, my dad is actually a manipulative asshole. She's been having these really difficult conversations with Harold where she directly confronts him about undermining both me and her brother Michael, and he just cannot admit to any wrongdoing. It's infuriating to watch, but I'm trying to just support her however I can. So we had this family dinner about a month ago that was a complete shit show. Sarah invited both her parents separately, with Harold arriving first. This was a mistake because he immediately started criticizing our kitchen renovation that we just finished. Sarah actually spoke up right away and told him to stop with the negative comments, and he acted like she's the problem for being too sensitive. Then he tried to change the subject to his legal battle with Elaine, but Sarah shut that down fast and said she wouldn't discuss the divorce with either parent. Then he pulled the victim card about how everyone has abandoned him, and I swear to God I almost laughed in his face. But then the doorbell rings and Elaine walks in, and Harold's face, oh my freaking God. He claimed he wasn't told Elaine would be there, which is complete BS because Sarah was super clear this was a family dinner with both parents. The craziest part was seeing Elaine. She's always been this quiet, meek person who defers to Harold, but she walked in looking so confident. She had this new haircut and was wearing this bright blue dress I'd never seen before. Harold immediately made a passive-aggressive comment about her hair, and I tried to change the subject to ask about his recent business trip, trying to keep the peace for Sarah's sake. Of course, he launched into this whole monologue about business challenges that's basically designed to make me feel stupid. Then Sarah just cut through the BS and addressed how we're going to handle future family gatherings and what boundaries we need. And Harold said he's forgiven me, so everything should go back to normal. I nearly choked on my drink. I just calmly said I never asked for forgiveness since I didn't do anything wrong. His face got so red. He accused me of turning everyone against him, and that's when Elaine spoke up for maybe the first time I've ever witnessed and told him he did that himself through years of manipulation. Harold left like 10 minutes later, claiming he had some urgent business call at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. Sure. The next day, we got this formal letter in the mail that was clearly reviewed by his attorney, apologizing for any misunderstandings, regarding his involvement in my career. Not a real apology, just covering his ass. Sarah threw it in the shredder. The extended family has been a whole other mess. At first, everyone took sides, with most of the older generation supporting Harold because that's just how men of his generation are. But then, as people started comparing notes, these other stories about Harold's manipulation started coming out. Sarah's cousin Tiffany discovered that Harold had actually interfered with her college scholarship because he thought the school wasn't prestigious enough. Like, who does that? Sarah's brother Michael has been amazing through all this. He and Elaine have developed this really close relationship that Harold always prevented before. Elaine keeps apologizing to him for not supporting his art career against Harold's wishes. It's heartbreaking, but also kind of beautiful to watch them rebuild their relationship. So the big climax to all this happened last weekend at a family gathering for Elaine's birthday at Michael's house. Harold showed up completely uninvited, claiming he had a right to celebrate his wife's birthday. Michael tried to ask him to leave, but Elaine said he could stay if he behaved appropriately. Harold came with expensive jewelry for Elaine, which she thanked him for, but then immediately handed to Michael to hold, making it clear she wasn't going to be bought. I was in the kitchen getting more ice when Harold cornered me. He was acting all friendly at first, saying he could help me with connections at this industry conference coming up. I just said no thanks, I'm doing fine on my own merits. His whole demeanor changed instantly. He said I haven't heard the last of this. I finally just asked him why he spent so much time trying to sabotage me, and he looked around to make sure no one else could hear, then said because I was never good enough for his daughter. I stayed calm, proud of myself for that, and asked if his treatment of others came from the same place of judgment. He got all dismissive and said I wouldn't understand what it takes to maintain a family legacy. I asked if that legacy included making his wife and children miserable. His face got so red, I thought he might have a stroke. He told me I had destroyed everything, and I just said he destroyed it himself by choosing control over family happiness. What I didn't realize was that Sarah had walked in and heard most of this. She told her dad she loved him, but couldn't have him in her life until he got help. He tried to defend himself, saying everyone was overreacting, but Sarah held firm and asked him to leave. Harold looked around and realized literally no one was on his side. As he was walking out, he said, "I made all of you who you are." And I couldn't stop myself from responding, "No, Harold, we became who we are by surviving what you did to us." The room was completely silent as he left, and then Elaine started crying, but it wasn't from sadness. She later told us it was relief. She'd been waiting for someone to stand up to him for 40 years. After he left, it turned into this weird impromptu support group with family members sharing their Harold stories. His sister revealed that he'd been like this since childhood, and their parents had enabled it because he was the only son. So where are we now? It's complicated. Some relationships are probably damaged forever. Others have grown stronger in ways I never expected. Sarah and her mom talk almost every day now. Michael and I have become actual brothers, which we never had the chance to be before. Harold is pretty much isolated at this point. Even his business associates are starting to distance themselves as rumors spread. His golf buddy suddenly resigned from our company's board last month, which I'm choosing to view as a win. The biggest change has been in how I view myself. I spent so long questioning whether I was good enough or if my success was really earned. Now I realize that surviving and eventually exposing Harold's sabotage actually took a lot of strength I didn't know I had. Sarah and I have been going to therapy consistently, and we're learning to recognize patterns we'd normalized over the years. We're working really hard to make sure we don't pass any of this toxic shit to our kids someday. I don't regret exposing Harold, but sometimes I wonder if there could have been a less destructive way to address it. Some family members are still torn about maintaining relationships with him, and Sarah still struggles with guilt sometimes, even though she knows none of this is her fault. Harold was wrong at that promotion dinner. He didn't make me who I am. Surviving his sabotage did. Edit. A lot of people are asking if I ever reported Harold's golf buddy to my company. I did subtly mention the connection to my CEO during a casual conversation. The board member resigned 2 weeks later. To the person who asked if I'm worried about professional retaliation from Harold, honestly, yes. I'm documenting everything just in case. But his influence seems to be waning as more people realize what he's really like. For those asking about Sarah's relationship with her dad going forward, we're taking it one day at a time. She set clear boundaries that any relationship depends on him getting professional help, which he refuses to do so far. Someone asked how Michael is doing with all this. He's actually thriving. He just got a gallery showing for his artwork, and Elaine's planning this huge opening night event to support him. It feels like a direct middle finger to Harold, and I am here for it.